The United States military once again cemented itself as the greatest fighting force that ever existed when over the weekend Delta Force swooped down to South America and just snatched up the president of Venezuela. If you went to the movie theater and you saw a film about what just happened, you'd walk out and say something like, yeah, that was cool, but it's just so unrealistic. Something like that could never happen in real life, except when Delta Force is involved. The United States flew 150 aircraft less than 100 feet over the water and destroyed the entire air defense system around the capital of Venezuela. Delta Force then snuck into the presidential fortress and had a gunfight all the way to Nicolas Maduro. They then detained him and his wife and extracted them both back to America. Amazing. And for all the people out there crying about the violation of international law and the abuse of power, why don't you take a note from the Venezuelan people dancing in the street around the world? This was a good thing. I'm Tyler Chrestman. Welcome to the Chrestman Conversation. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome. I am going to be doing today on the podcast, we're going to be doing a deep dive about the Venezuela situation. But before we get into that, I want to take a moment to talk about the comments from last week. I want to thank some people, the people who took me up on my challenge. So big shout out to Ludolph, Will, my brothers, Kyle, and Nick. I want to thank you guys for commenting on the last video, and I'm going to hold you accountable next January. So we got to get on those New Year's resolutions. Also, it's not too late if you want to go back, leave your comment on the YouTube video preferably, but you can do the Facebook one either or, but the YouTube one is easier. It's not too late. You can go back. You can still comment. It's not too late to get started on those resolutions for this year. But anyway, thank you for the people who actually listed out your resolutions. I appreciate you. And we got a lot to talk about, so we're going to jump right into it. Let's talk about topic one, Nicolas Maduro deposed. There is a lot that we're going to get into here, and I'm sure everyone is familiar with the news that the United States captured the president of Venezuela. Now, we're going to talk about the why of this, but I would like to first talk about the how, because the how is really cool, all right? There's no way to say it. There's no other way to describe it. The United States military is unbelievable. We have the greatest fighting force that's ever existed on Earth, and when we put it to use and we allow them to do their job, they are unbelievably good at it. So basically, I want to do it's going to be a little bit of recent history, and then we're going to talk about how this actually happened, and then we're going to talk about the why. So we're going to do it in that order. Basically, for the past couple of months, since September of last year, we have moved an armada of ships off the coast of Venezuela. The Trump administration has been sinking alleged drug boats that are coming from Venezuela to the Caribbean to traffic narcotics. That's the allegation. So so far that we know of, they have hit 35 different vessels. They've killed about 114 people in an effort to stop drugs from flowing into the United States. Now, what's wild about this is when you look at, there are numbers around this, when you look at what they're finding, for example, the amount of drugs that we've seized coming into the country, it drops off a cliff during the Trump administration. It's crazy what shutting the border does, but it is very noticeable that Donald Trump is good at controlling narcotics into the country. He is doing a good job of stopping that, which is a good thing. I don't care what you think about drugs or legalizing drugs or whatever your opinion is. Stopping drugs from coming across the border saves lives. It does. Absolutely, 100%. It saves people's lives. So Donald Trump is effectively saving the lives of Americans by blowing up boats in the Caribbean. Now, yes and no, but stopping drugs across the border, yes. This is a big flashy show of it, but you know what he's doing. He is stopping drugs flowing into the country. So we've been doing this since September. So it's been quite a while that we have been blowing up boats in the Caribbean and sending a message. We've also basically been the Trump administration, trying to get Nicolas Maduro to step down from office. It has been unsuccessful up until this time. So the CIA, and this is not classified information, they basically have come out and said this is what happened. The CIA had a team that infiltrated Venezuela, and they basically have been tracking Nicolas Maduro's every move for seemingly months. They knew where he sleeps. They know how he moves from place to place. They know his security detail. They know how his food is prepared, what he eats and how it's prepared. They knew everything about this man's life. They had Delta Force. So people think about the military, and you think about the different branches. You think about the different people that you consider these things. You see the movies about Navy SEALs and Army Rangers and Green Berets, and you have this idea in your head that they're the best of the best. The reality is that, yes, these guys are all very impressive. They're all excellent at what they do. They are top-tier operators. But Delta Force is a different thing. And we don't really know about Delta Force. We don't really get to hear a lot about Delta Force because Delta Force is covert in the extreme. They do these kind of missions. They're the guys who are doing the stuff we're about to talk about. But Delta Force is the greatest unit, I guess is how I would say it, unit or brigade, whatever you want to call them. They're the collection of people. The Delta Force operators are the best in the world at what they do, which makes them the best, most dangerous men in the world because the military, the United States military is the best, and Delta Force is the best of the best. So Delta Force basically has been training for months, they say, on a replica of the presidential palace. So they built an entire training facility that is a replica of where Nicolas Maduro sleeps. They did the same thing, by the way, for the bin Laden raid. When they were going to kill bin Laden, they basically built the compound and let people train on it. So they knew this place inside and out before they even got on the raid where we killed bin Laden. They did the same thing for Nicolas Maduro. So they built this training device. Delta Force has been training on it for months. They even were going so far as to know that Nicolas Maduro had a safe room, this big, I guess, steel door that he could close and lock himself in this safe room. And so they even brought blowtorches or some sort of thing to cut through the steel door if they needed to. So they had this thing down. They were waiting for the right moment. And last week, Donald Trump asked Nicolas Maduro once again to step down. He refused. And so basically Trump said, okay, well, we've given him the last opportunity we're going to give him. We're going to launch this operation. So they were waiting for a clear night. They had one. Basically, the night of the operation, they were waiting for clear skies so that all the aircraft could fly. They cut the power to the city of Caracas and basically to get an edge. And then 150 aircraft flew into the city to conduct targeted strikes against the air defense systems. So they blew up the air defense systems. Delta Force hit the ground in the city and then basically had a rolling gun battle with Maduro's security forces into the presidential palace and up to where Nicolas Maduro was, and managed to make it to Maduro before he made it in the safe room, so they didn't need the torches. They got him, they got his wife, and they managed to extract him from the country, where they took him back to New York, where he's going to await trial. And this is actually the quote from the indictment. This is why we have the legal means to get Maduro. This is from the indictment. The indictment says, quote, he's being indicted because of a cycle of narcotics-based corruption that lines the pockets of Venezuelan officials and their families while also benefiting violent narco-terrorists who operate with impunity on Venezuelan soil and who help produce, protect, and transport tons of cocaine into the United States, end quote. So he is now he pled not guilty to this. Him and his wife pled not guilty to this, by the way. We'll see. We'll follow this up as it continues to go into trial. But that's the how. That's what we did. Delta Force went into Venezuela, took the president, said, well, he's a criminal. He's ours now. Got him back to the United States where he's now going to await trial. Now, let's talk a little bit about the why. So that's the how. The how is cool. The how is going to be a movie someday. Like you've seen 13 Hours or Zero Dark 30. This is going to be a movie one day because it's too cool not to. The operation is awesome. Oh, by the way, from that operation, excuse me, bumping my desk here. From that operation, they say upwards of 100 or so people died. I can't remember. I had the exact number here, and I guess I didn't write it down. Silly me. But they said about 100 people died, most of which it turns out are going to be Cuban security forces. So Cuba was responsible for a lot of the security, I guess, around Venezuela. And some Cubans died, some of the Cuban security force. There's also some Venezuelans who died, and no Americans. No Americans were killed in this event. One of the aircraft was hit, and some people sustained injuries, but it doesn't sound like it was anything too critical, or at least they made it seem like it wasn't anything too critical, and no Americans died in the raid. So basically about as good as it possibly could have gone. It'd be hard to imagine being able to do it much better than the American forces did here. Now, so again, that's the how. Let's talk about why. Most people, listen, there's 190 something countries on Earth, maybe even more at this point. Sometimes those bigger countries fracture into smaller countries, and the balkanization of nations happens quite frequently. Sometimes countries combine or they get invaded, blah, blah, blah. But there's somewhere between like 190 and 200 countries on the planet. I do not expect you, as a regular person, to know the history of every country on Earth. That'd be ridiculous. So when we talk about Venezuela, a lot of people don't understand the history of Venezuela. I'm no expert on Venezuelan history. I basically, in the 2000s, have an idea of Venezuela because I'm familiar enough with the downfall of Venezuela, as it were. But I'm no history expert on this country. Most people aren't. So when we talk about a little bit of history here, it's important to note that Venezuela used to be the most prosperous country in South America, or at least one of the most prosperous countries in South America. It is incredibly rich in natural resources. So there are giant oil deposits in the country. It has a lot of gold. It has a lot of rare earth minerals. There are a lot of things that should make Venezuela a wealthy nation, but it is not. The people used to live relatively decent lives there, and American businesses used to thrive in collaboration with Venezuela. And they no longer do. They no longer exist. So we're going to go back all the way to 1999. So in 1999, Venezuela overwhelmingly elected a man named Hugo Chavez. Chavez was a communist. He ran a socialist party, but he was a communist. He was, by definition, a communist. And his popularity, he was elected, by the way. He didn't take over the country. This wasn't a coup. He was democratically elected. And his popularity was due in part to this growing wealth disparity in the country. Now, this is one of the reasons why I say wealth disparity is a ridiculous, nonsensical way to judge the health of the economy of a nation. It doesn't matter. I have a gigantic wealth disparity with Elon Musk. It does not change my life in any notable measure. The fact that I have money and he has a lot more money than me, it doesn't affect me at all. What matters is whether or not I have money. And so when you're looking at wealth disparity or average income disparity or these things, this is a really poor metric of the health of an economy. I do not believe that economists that use this as a way to judge the health of nations are doing it right. I think it is a ridiculous thing. If the if the standard of living elevates for everyone, but it elevates more for some people, it doesn't mean that you've gotten poorer. It still means that your life is getting better. It's just someone else's life is better. Well, that's the way it is in every facet of life as already. It doesn't matter that Elon Musk makes $1 billion and I make $100,000. If I'm making enough money to live, then that's fine. Anyway, but this is why people fall in love with socialists, because it seems unfair. It seems unfair that Elon Musk should have all that money and other people are poor. It seems unfair, and morally it makes you feel good to say, well, I don't think there should be a billionaire on the planet because there's people in poverty, and we should just take some money and give it over there, and wouldn't that be fair to everyone? That's the appeal of someone like Hugo Chavez. So he's elected. He says things are unfair. He says they're going to fix him. The Venezuelan people love him for it. Oh my gosh, this guy gets it. He's going to fix all our problems. And for a while, he does. He does a good job. So he's elected. You basically have, I wouldn't say it's a boom, but Venezuela does better. So things like poverty increase. Things like poverty decrease a little bit. Literacy rates increase a little bit. Everything is looking good. And it's great because these temporary gains are fueled from the fact that Venezuela is rich in oil. American oil companies went down there and made Venezuela prosperous because they set up all this infrastructure to allow Venezuela to basically export 3 million barrels of oil a day. So you're looking at 3 million barrels of oil a day. That's a lot of money that Venezuela did. So Hugo Chavez comes in, he nationalizes that. He basically says to American companies, get out of here. This is the Venezuelan oil. We don't want you in our country. This now belongs to the people. Okay, well, American companies are out. They lose their profit. They lose their investment, which is ridiculous. And as they say, we're going to take it for the Venezuelan people. Okay, fine. So everything's great because they have all this stuff that they didn't build, and they just took it, and then they say it's for Venezuela. So now they're making money off 3 million barrels of oil a day because oil prices at the time were high. And then what happens? Well, there's a decline in oil prices because it's a good, and every good goes up and down and up and down and up and down. So as the market dips and oil prices decline, you have a problem in Venezuela. So I want to show you this chart so you can see what I'm talking about here. Hopefully we can, it's going to be a little small, but I think you'll get the picture here. So this is a chart of Venezuelan inflation and oil revenue. And it goes back a long time, but we're mainly concerned about this spot right here. So when you're looking at these charts, it's a little confusing, this chart, but I want to show you something. So this line, you see this big black uptick right here. If you trace this back to 1999 when it's red. So this is when Hugo Chavez is elected. Now what you're looking at here is the inflation rate. So what you see here is inflation is not great, but it goes up, 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 as this red line right here declines. So these are the oil prices. So as oil prices begin to plummet, right around when Nicolas Maduro takes office, you see that the oil prices are going down, inflation is going up. Now, there's a reason for this. The reason is that Venezuelan, their economy, their government spending, all these programs that seemed like they were helping people, this redistribution of wealth, they were all funded by profits based off an oil company, again, that they didn't set up. So the U.S. came in. We basically said, okay, well, you're doing bad things. You're Nicolas Maduro, especially. When he comes in, he basically shuts down. He ignores election results. He starts executing political dissidents. He jails journalists. You see 9 million Venezuelans leave the country. They flee the country to try and get away from this. There were reports people were trying to kill and eat dogs in the street because he took the GDP of the country from $4,000 down to $1,500 a year. So everyone's living in poverty because the oil prices go down. The government doesn't have money. It doesn't have money for basic services. And so what happens is that they just start printing money. And when we just print money, that's when you see that uptick, that black line just go up, 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 up. That's the inflation rate. So all of a sudden, Venezuela, the money means nothing. Nobody has any money. Inflation is out of control. You saw it up there, 70, 80% inflation, maybe even higher. Let me double check. What was the highest on that? Oh, no. Whoa, I'm way off. No, I was thinking that this went up to 100. This goes up to like 100,000. So you're saying Venezuela, the dollar means nothing because you have 100,000% inflation. That's crazy. Remember what 9% inflation did here in the United States? So you're talking 100,000% inflation in Venezuela, where basically just the money is completely meaningless. So everything gets worse. Everything starts to decline. You're looking at an imposition of freedom because you have people who are jailed, people who are executed, again, thousands of people. And this happened under Chavez, but it really accelerated when Chavez died. So in 2013, Chavez died, and Nicolas Maduro takes over at that time. So it's been now 13 years, and Nicolas Maduro has been running Venezuela. It's important to note, Nicolas Maduro is not a smart man. He's a dummy. And I mean this that's the nicest way I could put it. We often think of people, we do this with politicians all the time. You think to be a politician, to be someone important, you have to be competent. It's not true at all. A lot of them are, but many of them aren't. And Nicolas Maduro is one of those people who's not that smart. He just is not. He's not a bright person. He was a bus driver, and then he was a union leader. And he got elevated not for his abilities, but because of his loyalty. He was incredibly loyal to Hugo Chavez. Hugo Chavez trusted him. He also was morally dubious. So you get a person who is loyal and willing to do things that are immoral for you. He got elevated for that reason. He didn't get elevated because he's a great thinker. He's not a great thinker. He is kind of a dumb person. He just can't do basic math. For example, there's video of him doing very simple math calculations, and he just can't do them. He doesn't understand basic math. He's not a great thinker. So this guy is a big dummy, but he's a mean person and loyal. So that's why he becomes president, because he gets tapped by Hugo Chavez to be his successor. Surprised a lot of people at the time, and especially in Venezuelan politics, because they looked at this guy like, this guy's a moron. How is he going to be president? And then he's president. Okay, so now he's president. Things get worse. Election results are ignored. He's imprisoning and executing people, lots of things. So basically everything is bad under Chavez, or under Maduro. The Trump administration, in the first go-round, said, hey, this guy is, not only is he a bad person, not only is he a tyrant, not only is he killing people in his country, which is all bad. There's plenty of bad guys around the world, though. But he also is getting rich off of drugs coming into the United States. He also, they allege, he is the head of a criminal cartel that basically works with the Venezuelan government to smuggle drugs into the United States. So he's getting rich doing something illegal in the United States. The Trump administration puts a bounty on him. Under the Biden administration increased the bounty. So Biden took it, I think it was a $15 million bounty that Trump put on him initially, and the Biden administration upped it to $25 million. $25 million for the capture of Nicolas Maduro. And I believe the Trump administration may have raised it up to $50 million in the last year. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I believe they actually upped it again. So this guy has had a bounty on his head by Trump and then a Democratic administration and then Donald Trump again. So he's not a good guy. We all have known this for a long time. The United States, though, we're not playing the savior here. I want you to, so we have very clear, I think, very evident reasons why we are going and doing this to Nicolas Maduro. Again, there are bad people all over the world. Why Nicolas Maduro? So yes, we have the drugs issue, which is a big deal. But there are also other things to consider here. So Venezuela we've had basically an embargo on them. So imagine, I'm just going to make up some numbers here to illustrate a point. Imagine that the global market says, well, the price of oil right now is $50 a barrel. Okay, we're going to sell 55-gallon drums of oil for $50. That's what the market price in the world is right now. The Venezuela, because of embargoes by the United States, they're not able to sell their oil at the regular price because we basically have this blockade around Venezuela that we don't allow them to compete on the world market because Nicolas Maduro's a bad guy, because he does bad things, so we've sanctioned him. And so what they do is they have to sell their oil at a discounted rate. They'll sell it for $25 a barrel. And right now, they're supplying their oil to China. So 4% of all of China's infrastructure is powered by Venezuelan oil. Chinese diplomats were in Venezuela to negotiate some of this with Maduro when we took him. And I like to imagine them opening the blinds and seeing the explosions going off in Caracas and then learning the next morning that the United States came in there and just took Maduro. I like to think the look on their face was pretty priceless. But so Venezuela supplies oil to China. They do business with Iran. They do business with Russia. They do business with all of our adversarial people throughout the world. Basically, Venezuela supports Cuba. Cuba, another communist dictatorship, they basically have supported the Cuban regime by supplying them with oil. Most of the people who died in this raid were Cuban security forces. So they are doing influence, or they are being influenced by our enemies and helping to coordinate with our enemies, China, Russia, Iran, Cuba, our adversarial people on the world stage. Venezuela does business with all of them. They are bad actors in our hemisphere. So there's a thing when you go back to James Monroe called the Monroe Doctrine. And it's been used in foreign policy for a long time to justify certain actions that we've taken, specifically in South America. We have deposed a lot of dictators. It's kind of a favorite pastime of ours in Central and South America to depose people we don't like. Basically, the Monroe Doctrine, simplified, we're going to put it into a paragraph. It basically says, hey, Europe, stay in Europe. Stay in your lane. And we're going to stay in our lane. That's kind of what it says. It basically says that European powers should not have an influence in the Western Hemisphere. And Western powers shouldn't really try and influence European powers in their hemisphere. And does this always abide by this? No. Do we do a good job of this all the time? No. But it is a justification for saying China, for example, becoming close with Venezuela. Is that a good thing for the United States? No, it is not. Do we want Chinese influence in the Western Hemisphere? No, we do not. Do we want Russian influence in our hemisphere? No, we do not. Do we like the fact that Cuba is 90 miles off the coast of Florida? No, we do not. So it becomes this whole thing. It's a justification, or at least somewhat of a justification, for going down there and doing what we did, because Nicolas Maduro not only is doing these bad things, killing Americans by helping ship drugs into the country, but also doing business with our enemies, which we do not want. So there's also, not to mention, the oil, the gold, and 300,000 tons of metric tons of raw earth minerals in that country that the United States want control of. We do not want China to have another 300,000 metric tons of rare earth minerals that they can use to go and build things that they don't want the United States to have. We want those things. We want them. We want them to be ours. We're hungry. Hungry hippos in the United States, those are our minerals. We'll do business. We're not going to take them. That's the Trump administration has said that about the oil. He basically has come out and he said, well, we're going to take the Venezuelan oil and we're going to sell it. And we're going to sell it at market value. We're not going to make them sell it at a decreased value. We're going to sell it at market value, and then we're going to give it back to Venezuela, but we're going to make sure that they spend it on the Venezuelan people. Maybe we'll take a percentage of it. I'm not sure how they're going to do it. But right now, immediately, Venezuela is going to be better off with the United States allowing them to do business than they were 5 minutes ago. The person who stepped up to the aftermath of this in Venezuela is going to be tricky. We're going to monitor it. I don't even want to go too much into it right now because we don't know all the facts. There's some speculation that maybe the vice president was coordinating with the United States to make this happen. We don't know that for sure. We're not going to just say that because we don't know. We don't know what's going to happen. Right now, there's a lot of posturing and a lot of this, but basically everyone has said in the government, there's two camps here. Some people are upset because much of Maduro's regime has stayed in power. Other people are acknowledging that we don't want to create a power vacuum where there's going to be a civil war. So they're going to stay in control, but we're going to say, hey, listen, we took the boss. You're going to do what we say, and you're going to behave in a dignified and proper manner. You're not going to be killing people in the streets. And as long as you work with the United States, you can stay there and not a jail in New York City. Because if you wind up going the other route, you're going to be next. And I don't mind that at all. I don't mind the United States using its dominance, using the fact that we are the global hegemon to put our thumb on the scale, especially in our own hemisphere, especially in our backyard, especially when the person who we've taken was killing Americans by proxy. And so I think it's a good thing. I think so. It's a culmination of reasons. I think that there is a legal precedent for this that is clear. I do not see how legally Donald Trump is doing anything wrong because the precedent was set in Panama with Noriega. We invaded Panama. People forget this. In the 90s, we invaded Panama, and we went to capture the president of Panama. We kidnapped the president of Panama because he declared war on the United States. He said, all right, we're at war with the United States. And we said, okay, that's fine with us. And we sent troops down there, captured the president, brought him back here. He spent 20 years in an American prison. And so I don't see why we can't do that with Maduro as well. So the backlash to this has been hilarious. You see people upset. Oh my gosh, what an abuse of power. How could this is terrible. Think of the Venezuelan people. I am thinking of the Venezuelan people. I am thinking that Nicolas Maduro is a bad person who did bad things. And I think that the leftists who are crying in America about how terrible this is and going out there and waving the Venezuelan flag and saying, oh my gosh, you did terrible. I think they should look to the actual Venezuelans who are dancing in the streets. Don't take my word for this, by the way. I brought a video. I want you to look at something. Take a look. It's going to be loud. I apologize. Can't help it. You know how those Hispanics love to have noisy demonstrations in the streets? This is around the world. Barcelona, Spain, on January 4th, the day after this happened. What do you see? Do you see a bunch of Venezuelans looking upset? I don't see that. How about Paris? Yeah. You see all the Venezuelans in the street? Do they look unhappy? How about Mexico City? Do they look unhappy there? I don't think so. It looks like they're celebrating. It looks like everyone is out there waving Venezuelan flags and saying, we're so glad to be free from this tyrant. And yet you have a bunch of I don't know, pasty white leftists in the country crying because they think the Venezuelans are upset. They're not. This guy was a bad person. He is a bad guy, and he's going to go to prison. He did bad things. He killed thousands of people or was responsible for the deaths of thousands of people. This is a good thing. It's a good thing for the world. And America, the other people who are crying, by the way, are the isolationist Republicans, which is just, I don't care. If you're libertarians and whoever want to cry about this, that's fine. You can, oh my gosh, how terrible. No, it's not terrible. And America, if we're going to be the global leader, which I think is a good thing for the world, then we have to be willing to exert our power and influence. And I love things like this. When we killed Qasem Soleimani, I thought it was a great thing. Everyone in the world said, oh my gosh. When we blew up the nuclear sites at Fordo, I thought it was a great thing. Everyone said, this is going to start World War III. It's been a year. What happened? Where are the people? Where are the Tucker Carlsons of the world who say World War III was going to happen if we strike Iran's nuclear facilities? Where are those people? Why are they always wrong and yet always so confident? Nothing bad is going to happen because of this. This is a good thing. This is a good thing for the world that another tyrant dictator is taken into custody. I don't think it's a bad thing. And we'll see. Hey, if I'm wrong in the future, if Venezuela becomes worse or Venezuela becomes our enemy or the next guy in here wants to declare war on the United States, you let me know, all right? Because I'll say, oh, yeah, guess what? That Venezuelan situation was way worse. There are certain times when you don't see American intervention as a good thing. You want to look back on Iraq or Afghanistan, and I say, well, I think you're mistaken. I don't think American intervention was a bad thing. I think the fact that we left was the bad thing. I think democracy building is silly, but I think the idea that we stabilized Afghanistan so that millions of women weren't living in abject slavery, I think that's a good thing. I think that was a good thing for 20 years, that we had American troops over there that allowed people the opportunity to live better lives. I think that was a good thing. You could say whatever you want. I think American force in the world is a good thing. I think the fact that we have troops in Germany, in Korea, in Japan today is a good thing. They happen to be our allies because of that. They're not our enemies because Americans live there. They're not. They actually like Americans and like the American presidents and like the fact that they are our allies and can rely on us to protect them and have their back. Because yes, as much as people want to make fun of it, as much as people want to say it's a bad thing, America is the world's policeman. That's what we do. That's your role as the leader of the world. So anyway, I think it's all a good thing. I'm interested, though. I'm interested to hear everyone's questions, comments, concerns, and tell me, excuse me, tell me where, I'm going to sneeze. Tell me where I go wrong in the comments. That's what I want to know. If you disagree with this, tell me why. So annoying. Then I will get to it on next week's episode for sure. I want to hear all of it in the comments below. Let me know exactly if I'm right, if I'm wrong, if you think it's a good thing, if you think it's a bad thing, if you think it's legal, if you think it's illegal, whatever it is. Just leave the comments down below, and we're going to and maybe if it's good, it'll be read on next week's episode. So you can always shoot for the stars. You can always hope, dream big. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there for the week. As always, I'm Tyler Chrestman. Hope you guys enjoyed the episode. I will catch you next Friday.